Okay, good.
Madam Clerk, may I have the roll call again, please?
Mr. Hutchison. Present. Mr. Mignon.
Here.
Mr. Owens.
Present.
Mrs. Stubbs. Present. Mrs. Winters. Here. Mrs. Trotto. Here. Mr. Mercado.
Present. We'll now have our public portion. This public portion is for agenda items only. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized. Mr. Sweet.
Sam Sweet from Ariel. How's everybody doing today?
Well,
I have questions on these capital budget expenditures.
I'm going to say that for the hearing then. There's a public hearing on the second reading of it.
We can't do it on the agenda?
We have a hearing for it. You can ask those questions on the second public hearing.
Okay, all right, then I have another question. I noticed that Mr. Schmidt is being nominated for GTMUA.
That's correct.
What are his qualifications for that, and who's he replacing?
He is replacing Frank Cimarelia. There is an appointment that was up. Mr. Cimarelia's term was up on the NUA. and Mr. Schmidt expressed some interest, and he's being appointed pending the outcome of the resolution.
Was that open to the public, or is it?
It's appointment made by council.
Appointment made by council. And what makes him qualified for that?
I think 27 years of service, 19 and a half here on council, makes him qualified.
Okay, just asking.
Okay.
Didn't know if there were actually qualifications for be a certain. I know MUA, to lead the MUA, you have to have certain qualifications, and same with like public works, you have to have your boilermaker's
You
license.
have to have a certificate,
Yeah.
but he's not leading the NUA.
No, I understand that. I just wasn't sure if there was other qualifications that needed, as opposed to why wasn't somebody else nominated, or there's only one person. Not that I'm asking why I wasn't nominated by any stretch. I'm just was wondering what the process was.
There was an opening, he expressed an interest, and we nominated him, and pending the resolution. They have reorganization on February 2nd. I believe it's February 2nd, it's Friday.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Bid report?
(2017) Road Improvement Program, reconstruction.
Entertain a motion to accept the bid report.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Strato. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Waive the reading and accept the minutes of regular meeting January 8th, executive session December 27th.
May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mignon.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stubbs. On the question, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Hutchison?
I'll abstain on the January 8th meeting, and yes on the December 27th meeting.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes on the January 8th meeting, and I abstain on the December 27th, 2017 meeting.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters?
Yes for the January 8th and abstain for December 27th.
Mrs. Strato?
I abstain from the January 8th meeting and yes on December 27th.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have ordinances, second reading. There will be a public hearing. 0-18-1 is a bond ordinance authorizing the acquisition of various pieces of capital equipment and the construction and completion of various capital improvements in and for the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, New Jersey, appropriating the sum of $6,198,323. Therefore, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds or bond anticipation notes of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, New Jersey, in the aggregate principal amount of up to $5,903,165, making certain determinations and covenants, and authorizing certain related actions and connections with the foregoing. This capital budget will allow for the reconstruction and repaving of various sidewalks within the township, reconstruction and repaving of various streets within the township, but not limited to Cherrywood Drive, Hillcrest Lane, Coles Road, and Johnson Road. Costs associated with various drainage projects throughout the township, improvements to recreational areas, acquisition and installation of traffic signals and street lighting, improvements to various township buildings, acquisition of additional replacement equipment for public works, acquisition of various replacement equipment and completion of various improvements for parks and recreation, acquisition of office and computer equipment for various township departments, and lastly, acquisition of various equipment for police department, not limited to police patrol rifles, computers, radio equipment, MDTs, mobile data terminals, body cameras, traffic safety equipment, and all-wheel drive vehicles. We'll now open up the public hearing. Mr. Sweet.
Sam Sweet from Ariel.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I first want to go on. I don't have anything against anything that's being purchased here, per se, but just basically, why are we bonding a $500 printer? And I understand that it's capital improvements, anything that's over, has a life expectancy of 5 years or more, can be bonded. But it's a $500 printer. We have a $1,500 eye wash station. $3,500 for 6 weed whackers and 2 blowers. Public Works Fed scanner for $500. A municipal court desktop scanner for $1,000. I'm not debating whether or not we need those stuff, and they need to be replaced. I'm wondering why we're bonding those, because I'm pretty sure that the printer and the scanners are going to be outdated in less than 10 years. So we're going to be paying for this because we're bonding it, which is incurring debt, and we're going to pay for this over the next 10, 11 years, and we're not going to have that printer in 10 years. The police cars, again, I'm not saying we don't need new police cars, but if we're bonding it for 10.69 years, isn't there a statute that says police cars can have to be retired after a certain amount, a certain year, no matter what type of shape they're in? So we're going to be paying for those police cars when they've been retired. That doesn't sound fiscally responsible. And I believe Mr. Hutchinson, about 12 years ago, ran on that platform.
Okay. Mr. Cars, you want to take a step? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you had a similar question regarding printers. I guess that answer wasn't satisfactory to you at our last meeting.
The printer, most printers will be obsolete. Every IT person will tell you that it will be obsolete in 3 years. I'll give it 5 years. All right, that's what the IRS, standard is. I understand that the IRS rules don't apply to governmental accounting, so that's 5 years of a printer. But again, the bond is 10.69 years, if I'm reading this correctly. So that's 5.69 years we're paying for a printer that will most likely be obsolete.
Can I comment?
Yes, and I know you have a printer.
Let's start with the printers. Let's start with the printers.
These 15
Because
years
when
of
we left-
your office.
We left that meeting, I went down and talked to Mr. Palumbo. There were 2 printers in his office. I asked him about both of them. One was 16 years, one was 17 years old. Rose just mentioned to me, she has a printer that's 15 years old. The criteria that's being met here is the state of New Jersey guideline under local bond law for what can and cannot be capitalized. And you are comparing everything to the weighted useful life of all the items. And we are prescribing again to state of New Jersey law, bond law, to how things are financed. So you're taking the 10 years, which is probably pretty correct as far as the length of the permanent finance, and you're disregarding the weighted average, because what you're doing is taking everything on the low end and saying, you shouldn't bond that for the average. And I disagree with you, Sam. And you can continue to argue whether you think this should be or this should not be. Can I finish? This should be or should not be included. Again, I disagree. It's permissible under the state of New Jersey, so you should take that issue up with the New Jersey legislature, with the Division of Local Government Services, who oversee local bond law, because that is what we are using as a guideline to prepare this document and to put it forward before council.
It's funny that you should say that I should take it up with the state of New Jersey. I did. I called them. And they said just because it can be doesn't mean can does not mean should, and should does not mean must. It's a $500 printer. Why are we bonding little items like that?
I don't know who you talked to the state. I don't see any documentation from you that you're presenting from the state that says that we should not handle this the way we're handling it. We disagree, and we're going to continue to disagree, just like we disagreed the last meeting when we introduced the ordinance.
You had said take it up with the state.
Mr. Sweet, I know it's your time, but can you let Mr. Carter respond? If you're going to ask him a question, please let him respond.
Again, you can check with any auditor, you can check with any bond counsel that you can find, you can check with any financial consultant. All of these items that are included in this bond ordinance are permissible under the state of New Jersey, and they're not going to give you a guideline that says, well, this one's borderline, this one maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. That's not what it is. It's clear cut. And what it is it's a listing under local bond law of the various items and the useful life of each item. And I suggest you familiarize yourself with local bond law if you want to go through the document and compare it to what the state of New Jersey says is the useful life of each item, including your printer.
Okay. I did familiarize myself with bond laws, and again, I'm not disagreeing that these cannot be bonded, okay? You are correct, they can be. I'm not arguing that point. I'm arguing from a fiscally responsible standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me.
And I disagree with you.
So you're saying that paying for a municipal vehicle that will be retired in 6, 7 years for an additional 3 years is fiscally responsible?
I wholeheartedly disagree with you.
I'm asking
that a vehicle will be retired after 5 or 6 years. That's not the way we handle vehicles. The way we handle vehicles here, let's say for example, police cruiser. Police cruiser goes out on patrol. The chief is here to corroborate what I'm going to tell you. That vehicle will go out on patrol. It'll be on patrol for probably a 3-year period, if I believe I'm correct with that. It will then be moved down to detectives and be used for another 2 to 3 years. It will then go to superior officers and be used for another 2 to 3 years. And then it will go to admin, and it'll be used for another possibly 4 or 5 years. Some of our vehicles date back to 1998. There's a Chevy Caprice sitting out there, an Interceptor, that has a 1998 registration. There are various vehicles that we have that were well over, and the majority of my type are well over 10 years. So I disagree with you. And I don't think you did the research because you didn't come to us and ask us to go look. You want to go through the registrations? Go look through the registrations of the vehicles. See what we bought and see how long they've lasted. I disagree with you.
Okay, with all due respect, we can agree to disagree on that,
No,
but
I
don't.
disagree.
Okay, we can agree to disagree, and I don't appreciate you saying I didn't do the research. I did do the research. Did I come to you and ask you for a listing of it? No, I did not, but I did call the bond agency. I did have them, been in communication with them.
About
Okay.
what we bought, what's here.
And
What's
they
in
said,
that
they said that it is up to the municipality. They can do that, and they're well within their right. And I said, that's fine. Whether or not, so my disagreement is not whether these can be bonded. They can
A
be.
vehicle will last
Okay.
6 years. You just said a vehicle will last 6 years.
Is there a police statute, is there a New Jersey statute that says that police vehicles or municipal vehicles have to be retired no matter what shape they're in?
I do not ever recall a vehicle only having a useful life of 6 years.
I'm asking, is there a state statute?
No, to my knowledge, there is not. No, the
Okay.
chief's here to comment on what can and cannot be used as a pursuit-rated vehicle, because that's the key criteria when you speak of a vehicle that a patrol officer is going to use on day-to-day police activity. They must be pursuit-rated. Heretofore, before these vehicles, these all-wheel drive vehicles that we're now driving, these Interceptors that look like four-wheel drives, that are four-wheel drive vehicles, we could not bond Interceptors, which would have been a Caprice or a Crown Vic. These can be bonded. Now, the chief can answer whether there's a time limit. I don't believe there are.
I'm not aware of any statute. I haven't heard of that before.
Right. Getting,
I just wanted to inject one thing, if I may. When I studied accounting a long time ago, there was a concept called the revenue matching principle. Are your questions really designed to match the expense with a useful life? Or how long we're going to be paying for this particular thing? And if so, how would paying a $500 printer in year one be better than bonding it over this length of time?
you're not paying the legal and accounting, the 2%, you're not paying the interest over the 10 years?
I think, though,
So, well, you asked me the question, so I'm answering it. From a fiscally responsible standpoint, you spend that money now, you're not spending, I mean, if we go through this list, one of the lists, again, and again, I'm not questioning whether these things are legitimate. I'm all for this. But the one list here, Project D, says $43,500. That's what the construction acquisition cost is. But if we go to the agenda, I believe it says $63,000.
When you say Project D, what are you referring to?
Project D is various improvements to recreational areas, including but not limited to the acquisition and installation of equipment for the Township Pool Recreational Center, together with the acquisition of all materials and equipments and completion of all work necessary thereafter related thereto, as more particularly set forth in the information on file with the Township Administrator.
So on the working document, it has a different amount of Mr. Cardis.
Now, what Mr. Cardis had said,
I just asked Mr. Cardis a question. Hold on. And Sam, please be cognizant that there are other folks, there is no time limit on our public hearing, but there may be other folks that want to speak, so please be mindful of that. Thank you.
Council President, we submit to bond council the very list that Mr. Sweet is looking at. They then take that list and they break it up into the various sections. They examine the useful life on it. They determine the maturity schedule for that particular general obligation bond ordinance. They then make the calculations for the first year interest, which is permissible under state law to be included, and of those closing costs as mentioned herefore by Mr. Sweet, which will be the accounting and legal costs. So the final product is in fact a product directly corresponding to the list that Mr. Sweet has, and again, to the list that I provided council and that I provided to the bond council to create the actual bond ordinance itself. I'm not here to talk about how they constructed that ordinance. All I can tell you is that I am assured by bond counsel that the document that you are putting forth is a verbatim to the list of the items that I have included and their calculations of useful life.
But my question initially went to why is it appropriate to spend $500 on a printer and expense it in this year's budget, as opposed to spreading it over the useful life?
it's increasing the debt of the township. It's $500 is minuscule. I agree with you. But
that flies, you're an accountant, right?
yes,
Okay. You know that's not an answer that is acceptable.
when it comes to governmental accounting and I'm paying my taxes, because this bonding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cardis, but the bonding, if we can't meet our debt service amount, we can raise our property taxes they're not subject to the 2% property cap.
But
Is that correct?
No, they're outside the appropriation, cap, and then there's a calculated adjustment under the tax levy cap. They are included, but there's a differential that allows them to exceed the 2% factor.
Basically, we can't meet our debt service amount.
Well, I mean, you're talking about defaulting on the debt, and that's something that's not acceptable under any circumstances, so that would not happen.
So, again, I'm going to go back to Mr. Hutchinson and say, yes, it's a $500 printer. Over the course of 10 years, it's going to cost us $750.
you brought up a bunch of different items. $500 here, $1,500 here, $750. In the aggregate, they're no longer $500.
Yes, but those items are small, and
But they lend themselves to a fluctuating tax
I think,
each year. And
but I think if we put them into the budget and pay them off this year, we're not incurring more debt.
I respectfully disagree, Sam. I
All right.
think that the most important thing we can have is consistency in how we put this together so that our taxpayers don't have to worry about fluctuations. We had a fluctuation 2 years ago. It was not a good situation. So I think that a steady, tax is more important.
Any other questions, Mr.?
I do, but I'm going to leave the floor to the other speakers, and I'll come back, if that's all right.
I will allow that as long as your questions are different than your first one.
They are different than the bond. Well, it pertains to this, but it doesn't pertain to...
They're different than your first
They're
question.
different.
Anyone else? Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidoro in the historic village of Ariel. If I may ask Mr. Hutchinson to either bring his microphone closer or sit up, please, so we can hear you in the back.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I believe I asked this question last time Mr. Cardis addressed it, and I don't think I was clear on the answer. You may have made it clear. Maybe my interpretation was not clear. At last, we discussed this at about the time of the first reading. My question to you was, with the huge amount of surplus that this township bears, you're borrowing $6 million. What is it that would prohibit you from using surplus money to accommodate the $6 million that we need and use $3 million of surplus funds and borrow $3 million rather than borrowing $6 million? I wasn't clear on your answer having to do with the state and whether you were stating to me that it was a state mandate law or you could not split on purchasing or whatever it is that you were bonding for, $3 million of.
Ray, I'm not familiar with anybody using money that is in fund balance surplus in the general fund to do capital budgets other than school boards and fire districts. The recommended method of financing capital projects through the local finance board is exactly what we're doing here, and that's the passage of general obligation bonds. You can fund them either through the issuance of one-year notes, which can be renewed year after year, up to 10 years. After the third year, you must make a principal payment on those notes, or in the case of a municipality the size of Gloucester Township, the recommended method is to permanently finance those issuances, and therefore that's why the useful life is calculated on the entire bond ordinance itself.
Okay, I'm going to simplify my question and hope for an even simpler answer and response. We hold what I believe to be more than enough in surplus to cover half of this $6 million. Am I wrong? The amount of surplus.
I don't know what the surplus balance is because it won't be completed until the annual financial statement on audit is.
Irregardless as to today, would you tell me that I was incorrect in assuming that we would not have $3 million available, especially since we haven't seen much snow and we're not eating up a lot of that in the budget? Would you tell me that I'm wrong in stating that we could not split this bond, $3 million, and pay $3 million that we have in the general fund that is sitting there from the previous year?
The answer to your question is I don't know whether you could or not. I would never recommend that to the governing body. I wouldn't recommend to any governing body. I would recommend taking money from the general fund to permanently finance items that would be normally permanently financed under the issuance of notes or bonds. I would not do that.
Ray, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And this is a simple question. So let's say that we have $5 million in surplus, and we use $3 million of that. And you've been coming to our meetings 12, 13 years. So every January we have this conversation, normally in January and February, about the capital budget. And each year we're doing streets, and each year we're doing sidewalks, and each year we're buying equipment. So we burn through $3 million of this $5 million surplus. We're down to $2 million. What are we going to do the following year? Are we able to bond? Are you okay with us bonding? When is it acceptable for us to bond?
I can honestly say that I don't, in the different various parts of the township, see you spending that much money in improving sidewalks and streets. Not that they're not being done, but that would be part of a general budget in any given year. The huge tax increase that happened a few years ago.
It's a capital budget. You know it's different. Our capital budget is different.
Of course it is, but the problem is, and I will continue to make it simple, because instead of using words, and forgive me for sounding sarcastic, but it's how I hear it. When you're using accounting terminology, it's appropriations and levy, and it's not in the simplest terms that people watching can understand. Can they understand it? Absolutely. But the difference between what the budget is, what the levy is, and what the appropriations is, what an earmark is all great. In the simplest terms, when I see you borrowing, me personally, maybe it's my education, when I see you borrowing $6 million, and I do believe you have $3 million on hand, I'll go back to the same thing I've been saying each and every time you borrow money and I come up to this microphone. And a household budget is not that much different than a governmental budget, other than the fact that you have certain rules that apply to you, where you can buy, how you can buy. But for the lack of what we do at home, it'd be like giving someone cash and they swipe the credit card when they got cash in their pocket. If we can pay bills now and not have those bills down the road. One of the things that bothers me most is that borrowing money, one of the greatest weapons a government can utilize with borrowing money is to totally ignore the 2% cap that the state has in place, to keep taxpayers from paying 12%, 16%, 23.5 cents, 26%. Double-digit tax increases happen in Gloucester Township. And each time you borrow, you can ignore that 2% cap. And it's quite convenient that in 2017, you already took the liberty of banking last year's cap, which means 2% is sitting, floating around, waiting for us to be hit with that. If you bank 2% in 2018, which I expect you will, 4% just sitting and hovering for when you're ready to drop the hammer. If you do it 3 years, because you guys have a great habit of zero tax increase, bam, 9.9, 12%. This is what the borrowing is
I
about.
still haven't heard your answer to my simple question. All you do is give me your stump speech. Tell me...
Stump for what, Mr. Mikado?
Well, it's the
I don't
same.
stump for
Yes,
anything.
Yes. So, Ray, is it okay to bond? So if we run through $3 million or we just get rid of the entire surplus, we have nothing in the bank. And you like to use the analogy of the credit card, right? And a household. You ran through all your savings. What do you do next year?
You didn't
You
run
still
through...
have crumbling streets. You still have crumbling pavements. You still need to purchase equipment. Okay, let's think about what our capital budget has bought over the years. And I think you know where I'm going to go. 5 years ago, members of the council were ripped apart because we authorized to go out to bid for a Bearcat. You remember that?
I remember that.
You remember that? Dan remembers that. Michelle remembers that. Tracy remembers that. I remember that. We were here. God forbid if something happened. We purchased the Bearcat for our community under a capital budget. It came into use 2 weeks ago. That was under our capital budget.
Understood.
We're planning for tomorrow.
Sometimes it's okay to pay your bills. Sometimes it's okay to take the money out of your pocket and pay the bills. Because what's happening is the borrowing will always allow you to ignore the 2% cap. What you're doing here. Again, I would love to know if there is and I understand that the state uses terminology, may and shall. And when you use may and shall, it gives you an opportunity to quote Sam, just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
Let's clarify. Let's get away from, let's go basic finance. Get away from the account. There's two funds. There's a general fund, there's a capital fund. They're separate funds. Whatever's raised over here stays separate from this one. This is the one that funds the police officers. This is the one that funds the public works. This is the one that keeps the electricity on. This is the one that generates that tax bill. Over here, it's the principal and interest payments that come over here that you have to make on an annual basis of all the money that you borrow. So what you said before was, why don't you take that big pot of surplus that you say is there? And I said to you, it's not there. And I'll tell you how you find out whether it's there or not. You take a look and you see what we finished out with, either through the audit or through the annual financial statement on audit, which is all online. And then you look to see what did we put into the budget under the surplus number over here to offset taxes going up. Did we take the whole $5 million and put it over here? That general fund money that you say we ought to move over here and buy equipment and everything instead of using it over here to keep taxes down. You check and see, after that process, after that year filters out, after that money's sitting there, how much got applied to the following year's budget. And I'll tell you, you're wrong. There's no money sitting there. We take it down to almost zero. So check that out and then come back and let me know if there's money sitting there after we do the budget the following year. When we anticipate that very first item on sheet 4 of the state budget document, the very first item, surplus anticipated. It's the first revenue item in there. Take a look at it. Then let me know how much money's left over that we can move over to capital, that luxury money, that we can pay for all those things that we won't have to borrow. Simple.
And I'll keep it simple for you just as well. I'm sure that I can go back and review videos.
Please, I'm encouraging you.
And also the videos of previous council meetings when we spoke of, keeping about a $2 million surplus, and why were we keeping something in the range of 5.2? And again, whether you got them that much or a little bit less, the greatest thing a government can do for their taxpayers is pay your bills. And not the credit card is our credit card. The bills you run up, you pay taxes and we pay taxes on. Find a way to buy stuff that you can afford. And as far as where you may have been going with that, I'll be the first to tell you, whatever Chief Earl and his police department, our first responders need, borrow whatever you have to make sure that they have what they need. But as far as fixing a pool for the third or fourth or fifth time, and we borrowed $106,000 to fix a playground and something else, but about $33,000 went to that playground when we borrowed around 106, which also went to State Street. I get that, but sometimes we borrow more than we have to.
Did you say there was $3 million? Did you just say there was $3 million that could be applied to capital? Because I heard you say $3 million.
My question was a
Did you say
hypothetical.
that?
My hypothetical was, could you use $3 million and borrow $3 million? And I was looking for your answer.
Mr. Polidori, do you have any other questions?
Well, Mr. Cardis was responding to me, and I was responding back to him.
Do you have any other questions?
Well, no, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak before Mr. Sweet comes up? Yes, sir. So he's the last one before Mr. Sweet. You're ending the second public hearing.
Good evening, Bill McCauley, Autumn Ridge. I have two basic questions. Number one, how about them birds?
All right.
Right, come on.
We can all agree on that.
Second question is...
How can you get a cheap pop?
Yeah, right.
All right.
It sounds like the money that we're borrowing is for, I guess, like, not maintenance, but routine things that continuously need work. Like, roads are always going to have to be fixed, correct? Am I misunderstanding that?
Yes.
If there was a surplus, and no one really knows if there is or not, what do we use that surplus for if it's not routine things in the future? Is it almost like a rainy...
Your comment that no one really knows, I disagree.
Okay, so there's no surplus.
There's factual evidence.
Okay.
That factual evidence is on our website. It's in the audits. It's in the annual financial statements on audit. It's in the state budget document that's filed with the state of New Jersey. It tells you how much balance is left after each year in the general fund of fund balance. And then it tells you in the budget how much was applied. And that's what I'm explaining to Mr. Palladora. Look at that. You will see whatever's left is applied to the following year's budget, and that's done to offset the amount to be raised by taxation.
I understand.
That's not up, to me, that's not open for conjecture because it's fact.
And I'm not disputing that, and I guess just since I don't have that document, I did not review it before this question, it kind of just sprung from the interaction. So is there or is there not a surplus? I can't look at the documents as I'm up to my...
surplus is, I don't want to get into the accounting because I
Sure.
don't want to confuse people.
I'm not as good as accountant as Mr.
Look,
Sweet is.
surpluses occur for two reasons. One, you didn't spend all the money you appropriated. And
Good
in the
Lord
state
willing.
of New Jersey, you have to run 2 budget cycles before let's say hypothetically,
Sure.
the 16 budget was a $50 million expenditure budget. That has to run through 16 and then 17. When it's done with 17, whatever's left over, let's say we only spent $45 million of the 50. That $5 million then becomes surplus in 18.
Correct.
The other way you generate surplus is that you bring in revenue beyond what you anticipate. When you create a budget, in that budget, you anticipate all the revenue items you're going to get, all your court funds, all your construction fees,
Sure.
all of the, your abatements. Now, if something comes along, maybe we sold a piece of property. Somebody came in and said, I'm interested in buying that for $1 million. They buy it. Now we got $1 million. That wasn't anticipated.
Sure.
So now that would create fund balance. So 2 ways. Money left over from the appropriations that you didn't spend, and 2, revenues that come in beyond your anticipation. Those are the 2 ways to generate fund balance.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sweet.
Sam Sweet from Ariel. Do I really have to say my name every time I come up?
No, that's fine.
Okay. The Bearcat, just to touch upon, when was that purchased?
That was
Or
purchased in 2013.
how many times have we needed the Bearcat?
Chief, are you able to divulge that first?
Quite frankly, it's, exact numbers, no. I mean, it's
Ballpark?
used all, no, I can't use it all.
You can't, or because you don't know it, or
I mean,
has it been used more than once, more than 10
search
times?
warrants in the past year, it's used all the time.
What's that?
20-some search warrants in 2017 alone, it's used all the time.
Okay, all right, I'm just, again, I'm all for the Bearcat, not against it, just want to know how much it was being used. Because you had made an impassionate plea, Mr. Hutchinson, so I didn't mean to go you, saying that if it can save one life, then is it worth it? I believe that was about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago?
That I had that dialogue with?
What's that?
Were you the individual?
No.
that had that? Okay.
No, I was in the audience, but
Okay.
you made that speech. And I believe that 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago, that it did save lives. Okay? So, again, it was a nice move by you guys to do, but at that meeting, it should have been stated why we went out and bought it. Thinking
Well,
forward.
that was thoroughly
Oh my God.
explained go ahead, Ms. Estrada.
It was explained. I was a part of that discussion. I mean, I so remember Ray arguing
What I'm
with
getting,
me
what I'm
about
getting at,
buying it.
what I'm getting at is that a lot of the people in the community did not understand it. And
No, I disagree with
I-
that, Sam.
I've been out in the community and they don't understand it, and I've actually stood up for it and said, you guys are wrong on that. That's not the reason. I just wanted to know what it was about.
Let me call, I'll let you speak,
Okay.
continue, and give your time. But I remember there was a shooting in the southern part of the township that happened on a Sunday afternoon in the winter, and we had our police officers behind a school bus. And that was something that when we had this discussion about the Bearcat, and people brought up, well, the county has one. Why can't we use it? It's at Lakeland. This is in 2013. And I'm going to be honest with you, this body and the mayor's office was vilified for purchasing that Bearcat. And this is not about the Bearcat, but this is about a capital ordinance. We don't go willy-nilly putting things in a capital ordinance budget.
I'm not saying you do.
We're planning for tomorrow. And there's things that we have to address. And yes, you may not like a $500 printer or a $1,500 weed whacker, but those are things we put in our capital budget to improve our community. Floor is yours.
Okay. Again, was not one of those people that vilified you for the Bearcat.
No, we know who they are.
Okay? Was not one of them. Just want to point that out. Getting to some of these, I noticed that some of them say phase 1 of 5 and phase like 2 of 5 on the,
Can you identify them? I don't have.
sure,
the word.
body
I agree.
cameras payment 2 of 5.
Excuse me?
Body cameras payment 2 of 5. It's $126,000. Again, I'm fine with it. Does that mean that payments 3 of 5, 4 of 5, are they going to be this year, or are they going to be next year's payments? Are they
Subsequent years.
subsequent years? Okay, so where it says next generation 911 phase 1 of 5, that's going to be 2 of 5, 3 of 5, but years, not bonded in 6 months.
You are correct.
Okay, just wanted a clarification on that. I'm going to go to something that hits home for me, and I know you and I will disagree on this, Mr. Mercado, but scoreboards. We have a $15,000 scoreboard going to Lakeland, part of this capital budget, and a $25,000 football scoreboard going to this capital budget. I firmly disagree with that. I don't think the township should be paying for scoreboards. I think if the leagues want their scoreboards, they should go out and have fundraisers. I believe Ariel Little League raised money for their lights. It's $150,000. They they did not want to wait for township approval, they went out and did it themselves. Why can't these schools or these leagues raise that money themselves?
There are leagues that, I'm very familiar with Blackwood Kiwanis because I coach in that league. I coach a T-ball team there. And at Blackwood Kiwanis, they'll cut their own grass, even though it's township-owned park. They will manicure the fields. They do some of the construction under the supervision of Public Works. They have paid for things out of their own pocket. And many of these organizations, if we want to reference Ariel, he talked about the lights, and that was great when Ariel said, hey, we'll raise our own money for the lights. They wanted to have lights in their facility. But we also repaved the parking lot. That was part of capital budget. We also spruced up the clubhouse and the press box. That was part of the capital budget. But these are our facilities. So there are, as you well know, because you were involved in Cherry Hill, correct, and involved in Ariel in some respect, that there's a lot of money that these organizations raise that they don't come to the township and ask for. They just go ahead and do it. And they're improving our facilities. You could probably go back and look in our budget for the last 10 years. I don't believe Lakeland and GT Baseball has received anything. Dan, I know you were involved with them for many years when your sons played. I don't recall them even coming to us, asking for anything. It's a scoreboard.
It's a scoreboard that
It enhances our facilities, and we're going to agree to disagree.
I think that it's a school. We will agree on one item. It does enhance the facility, but the money can be raised without having all of the Gloucester Township residents pay for it, because only a certain select, get an advantage from that or enjoy the scoreboard. I'm sure my next door neighbors who are 75 years old aren't going to enjoy that scoreboard.
Yes.
I've had this debate with other people, tangentially related, I should say. The 75-year-old person, maybe they're not going to the baseball game, and maybe their children or grandchildren are past that age, but they had children at one point in time who benefited from a similar expenditure. So I don't think it's fair to say, okay, you're 75, yeah, you're not benefiting for it, and you shouldn't have to pay it. These are improvements to the town. That hockey complex down the road provides something to 700 kids. We've got soccer fields. The biggest epidemic that this country is facing right now is opioid use and drugs. If these expenditures keep our kids active just for a little bit of time, it gives us that much more hope that they're not going to be involved in the drug problem, okay? So I don't have a problem with it. You and I will agree to disagree, and if it costs me my next election, I'm totally okay with that.
You bring up the opioid problem. Did you ever a really neat scoreboard? When you played, did you play on turf fields? I'm asking.
I'm answering. It's an experience, okay? When the kids go down to the baseball field in back of Glen Oaks, there's a nice scoreboard there. It's a well-manicured field. The kids feel like they're a part of something. It's important. When you go to the hockey complex up the road, did it have to be that nice? Well, no. I used to play in a tennis court when I was a young kid. That's how I played hockey, okay? But this is something different.
But to say that, and I'm going to agree with you that it is something different and it's very nice, but to say that that's the facility that's going to prevent the kids from going on opiates, I'm going to disagree with that, because personally, preventing from opiates starts at home. Not whether or not we have a nice facility, whether there's turf fields, we're going to agree, whatever. That's not going to prevent, if anything, with the injuries on the turf fields, doctors are prescribing painkillers quickly. We can, that's a totally separate discussion for a totally different time. Okay, but I don't think having the nice fields and the nice scoreboards prevents kids from doing drugs.
My kids run on a track, and that track is not a cinder track, okay? The nicer the track, the more likely it is it's going to attract additional kids to the sport, okay? And those little incremental increases in niceties, for lack of a better way of calling it, have an impact. They bring kids.
I will agree with you. I will agree with that.
And that's what I'm talking about.
But I still think that if a league wants a scoreboard, they should raise funds for it, and it should not be on the township to do.
But then that cost is passed on to the child's family. And, you know, we threw a cross-country banquet recently, okay, my wife and I. And we received a couple of phone calls about one family who couldn't afford to pay. So we absorbed the cost, my wife and I. And I bring that up because these organizations, not all of the kids can afford to pay. They can't. And if you pay, every dollar represents the straw that could break the camel's back. So if this is how the town can make a difference and create vibrant sports organizations, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Sam, do you have any other questions?
Actually, I do.
Okay.
I
I like the
From
red.
Mr. Mignon,
Yes.
if a child can't pay aerial, I know Highland Youth Soccer has I forget the name of the fund, the Lamena Fund? Does anybody,
I'm not-
Yes.
is it the Lamena Fund? Where a child, they dip into that fund and pay for the child's, if parents can't afford the dues. Does aerial have anything like that?
Yes, as a families in financial crisis, they will go to the president of the Little League and discuss that with them, and then there have been some exceptions to children paying.
And did the money you raised for the lights get passed on to the children and the families?
Right, but that, they weren't totally, I mean, they did have to help fundraise.
There were fundraisers, but I mean, was the cost, did you say, okay, it was $150,000, we have 700 kids, so you're going to be in Little League for 10 years, therefore it's, I'm making numbers up obviously, $3,000, 10 years is going to cost you an extra $30, you have 3 kids, so it's $30 a kid, increasing your fees by $30. Did you pass that on?
No, I mean, we basically made every family responsible to.
To fundraise.
Yeah, $100, regardless.
So, going back to your statement, Mr. Hutchinson, of that raising money for a scoreboard, I mean, I raised money, $25,000 for a Cherry Hill scoreboard. That scoreboard is still standing. For the
I
record,
want you to use some of those talents for a Field of Dreams, because you've been telling me that since last.
and-
Let me finish, Sam. You've been telling me that since last year,
mhm.
and I haven't seen you since you took a picture on opening day at Field of Dreams. So, Sam, take those talents and maybe raise some money for a Field of Dreams. Do you have any other questions?
Yes.
No, and I don't want to go back and forth. Do you have any
Okay.
other questions regarding this, and not cross-country banquets or?
When will Field of Dreams be set up a 501c3 for Field of Dreams?
Speak to Mr. Mignon after the meeting.
Because that's what we need to get it.
Speak to
You
Mr.
want to throw,
Mignon after the meeting regarding
Mr. McCarty, you throwing the gauntlet down and saying you didn't see me. I was at Field of Dreams as much as I could, and I was there a lot more. You saw me there and said hi to me several times when I was there, including after I lost, including
I'm still waiting for that.
2 weeks
Still
after.
waiting for the fundraiser.
Okay, I
Do you
can't
have any questions?
fundraise without a 501c3
Yes, you
in
can.
Field of
You're right.
Dreams.
Sam, do you have any other questions about this ordinance?
Yes, I'd like to petition the council to remove the scoreboards to a later date.
We'll note that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing. I entertain a motion for bond ordinance 0-18-01.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Owens. On the question, roll call.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Trotter?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Ordinance 0-18-02 is a bond ordinance authorizing various improvements to the storm watch drainage system in the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, State of New Jersey, authorizing the sum of $1.4 million, therefore authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds or bond anticipation notes of the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, State of New Jersey, in the aggregate principal amount of up to $1.4 million. making certain determinations and covenants, and authorizing certain related actions in connection with the foregoing. This is for various drainage improvements in our township, but not limited to the replacement of stormwater piping on Cherrywood Drive and Kelly Driver Road, and the replacement of a head wall at Signey Lane. We'll now open up a public hearing for this ordinance. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. I entertain a motion.
Make that motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have our resolutions of consent agenda. Any council member that would like to remove any of the items, please speak up.
Mr. Mercado, we already voted on one of the,
30 was already, that wasn't part of the consent agenda. It was above. Hearing none, I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Hutchinson. Thank you, Mrs. Strato. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, go ahead.
46, resolution appointing member to the Gloucester Township Municipal Utilities Authority.
I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Mignon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes, we did not receive any GTE Gov access emails. Next, we have our public portion. This is for any item. Anyone wishing to address council, please raise your hand. Mr. Highball.
Good evening. Pete Heinbaugh, Morningstar Court.
Good evening. Happy New Year, Pete.
You too. The 2018 budget, refresh my memory, when's the first budget draft public will see? What's the timing of that?
Introduction is in March or late February.
I believe it's listed right now in March. I believe it's March 10th, but they may extend that. They've recently, they being the Division of Local Government Services, has, they've made a decision to go paperless, and it has not gone very smoothly. They activated what's called a FAST system, and a recent email last week was asking everyone not to use the system because it had backed up, and not to submit further budgets. There is a number of problems with the system. I know, I don't know for a fact, but I was told that the RMA, Registered Municipal Auditors, had in fact petitioned them to go back to paper. That's how bad it was. So I don't know if there'll be an extension. I think statutorily, the AFS statement has to be done by February 10th, and the budget has to be introduced by March 10th. Kind of in the past, as you know, they've extended that.
Yeah. So that extension is for the submission process. You're currently working on building the 2018 budget. You've
We
done
are,
some.
yes, yeah, we are.
Is this this non-action on the 2% arbitration cap? Is that, you anticipate that having any impact on the 2018 budget?
Answer?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because most of the negotiation process has reached its finality. Most of the contracts have been settled. I think the only one that has not been finally satisfied is the police patrol, but I think it's very close, and I don't see that being an issue moving towards arbitration where that would be a factor.
An issue, you mean it's unlikely it'll go to arbitration? Is that what you mean by it won't go to-
That's basically what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Another topic. I think it was last year at some point, there was a lot of progress that sounded like it's being made on something called the Gloucester Data Center. On the, a development project called the Gloucester Data Center. cloud storage data.
On Lower Landing Road.
Yeah. Where'd
Mr.
that go?
Lechner, do you have an update on that or any progress that they've made?
I haven't, waiting for the revised plans from the engineer.
'Cause that's a private project, it's in our redevelopment plan there, but,
I haven't heard from the applicant.
okay.
Okay.
City project.
Yeah, I was wondering about what the delay, it was supposed to come around third quarter of last year or something like that, but I haven't heard a peep about it since then.
Ken, can you give me I'll call you tomorrow, and you give me an update, I can
Yeah,
provide something.
I'll
to Mr.
find out.
Hall.
And I believe that project was brought forward by the Gloucester Township Economic Development Corporation. Do they have any other development projects that are kind of in their pipeline or that they're?
Mr. Lechner? Mr. Lechner attends the
That
meetings,
was
the
a
monthly
private,
meetings.
that was a private development, the Gloucester Data Center. That was a private project. Gloucester Township Economic Development Corp. We've been doing some development studies through grants for Black Horse Pike from basically Meadows Diner south along the Black Horse Pike. We did a redevelopment plan, and we're trying to got a grant from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission for streetscapes and things of that nature. So we're kind of concentrating on that area that's adjacent to the Gloucester Premium Mountain.
I don't quite understand the interrelationship between this Economic Development Corporation and your community development area of the township and.
Well, it's a private corporation, and I'm the government liaison to that corporation.
So
But
these
they
grants
have
that you're mentioning, the Economic Development
Well, that was
Corporation
through
needs
the
to?
township, but they've supported it. And we present that to their at their meetings, and we seek their input.
Yeah, I'm not sure I still yet understand the interrelationship. Okay. Another topic. A year or so ago, we passed an ordinance where we were going to get into the GT Housing Authority was going to get in the property rehabilitation business and work on some individual lots and rehab them and sell them and recoup their rehabilitation costs. Has anything occurred with that? Any projects, any lots or properties?
I know that the progress has been very slow, Mr. Cardis.
I'm unaware of where that's happening.
And the Housing Authority manages that. Is that,
That's
would be managing that?
my last recollection of.
And would they come to you or to this body if they identified a project, or would they just go ahead and do it on their own?
I think they would first report to the mayor.
So they wouldn't just go ahead and do it on their own? It would come through the administration?
My understanding, yes.
Okay. And a lot of that was based on kind of the expertise of the then executive director of the Housing Authority, who no longer is with the Gloucester Township Housing Authority.
Which executive director are you referring to?
The one that was in place when we passed this plan to do the rehab.
That individual's no longer with the.
Right, but that was kind of the basis, his expertise was kind of part of the reason this program was undertaken. So maybe do we not have that expertise in the township or in the housing authority anymore?
What I can do, Pete, I can get an update on their progress.
Okay.
Pete, do you have anything else, because your time's up?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I need you to wrap it up after your next question.
Okay. Also, about 13 months ago, an ordinance was passed, and I'll quote, it was in the ordinance, prevent fraud, crime, unethical, and dishonest business practices related to fire scenes in the township. Has anyone been fined or any arrests or any complaints or anything related to that ordinance since that ordinance was put in place?
I wouldn't know that, Mr. Carver, Mayor, or Chief.
None that I'm aware of.
You like, dude, you're chatty Cathy today?
We have one that is licensed and two that are going through the process right now.
So they're compliant, those people
Yes.
are in compliance with that new ordinance, yes, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCullough.
Glad to see my Eagles play sparked a very lively sports debate. I'd like to revisit that. Mr. Mercado, I believe you said that the league that's receiving the funds for this scoreboard, you said they did a lot on their own in years past, correct?
Yes. Most of our organizations. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but our organizations, our recreational organizations, are not run through the township.
Sure, yeah.
They're on township-owned properties, and they fundraise on their own.
Correct.
But sometimes they come to the township for different needs that they have, and we try to accommodate them if we can to enhance their property or add to their league.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So was this a case where they said, hey, we have a track record of fundraising a lot of money on our own. We're looking for a scoreboard. Can you help us out? Because if they're successful in years past fundraising, to me that seems like more of a reason to rely on their own fundraising abilities than bonding money. So was this something where they came to you and said, hey, can you help us out here?
No one came to me personally and said, hey,
well,
can
not
help
you
me out?
personally.
But they
Right.
most likely approached the administration,
Okay.
Mayor's office, Mr. Card's office.
Okay.
But what you've seen too is that I know in the league that I participate in, and also Mr. Mignon's league, we see declining participation because they have varied interests now.
Sure.
And some people, other organizations try to say maybe they're interested in lacrosse.
Right.
Or maybe they're interested in the performing arts. Or maybe they're just gamers and they don't want to go outside of the house.
Right.
But so it becomes a challenge. And I've never been a board member. Mr. Mignon was a board member here for many years, and he could tell you the challenges of raising money over and over again and going back to the well over and over again
Sure.
for specific needs of an organization. But that particular scoreboard there, both of those organizations, they tend to fundraise on their own. They do not ask for much from the township, and sometimes, quite frankly, they're kind of embarrassed to ask
Sure.
the township for things.
Good.
But I think that's something that's a wonderful facility down there. It is adjacent to our hockey facility there, so you have folks that are going into that particular area that see our recreational facilities, and I think that they have to be held to a certain standard.
Sure. And I would just like to express my interest in, again, I'm newer to the community, but I would love to help improve the quality, just like everyone, I believe, would. So I would love to, I guess, see a collaboration of fundraising efforts and would be more than willing to help out in any way I can. Last question I have, the bond regarding the stormwater drainage system. Will this drainage system drain the swamp? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I would like you to, no laughs from the council. But could you just go through, I guess, where that's taking place? I know you mentioned Kelly Drive, but I just wanted to jot down where that was taking place.
Cherrywood, and if you've been in this township for a while, we've had many phases to Cherrywood. Mr. Cantwell, I've been on council this is my 14th year, and Mr. Cantwell, I asked him a question a few months ago at a workshop, when are we nearing the end? And there's many phases in Cherrywood, and each year that's part of our capital budget.
Sure.
Mr. Cantwell?
I believe your question was about the drainage project.
Yes.
Drainage project for paving.
Yeah, paving projects, but there are also some drainage issues that perhaps you can.
Well, the drainage ones I'm not as familiar with, but they should be listed in the ordinance.
Yeah, no, it's Cherrywood. It's
One in Cherry.
Kelly Driver Lane, the head wall in Singling, which is in Frank Timberbirch, Singling.
Materials.
You know where Singling's at, Frank? Singling.
S-I-G-N-E-Y.
I hope it's in Gloucester Township.
We believe so.
That's right here,
Timberbirch.
Timberbirch? Okay.
The Whites live on that road.
Orlando,
Yes.
this project come from a survey from the county of the drainage areas most in need of immediate action. And so we have to select from, we don't have to, but that's the guideline that we use is we select from that listing.
So there's a list and you pick,
Yes.
we're gonna knock off, okay.
And-
Is there
and
somewhere where I
the
can find
county
that?
prioritizes the urgency of each one of them. I saw pictures of the most expensive, which is that Sydney Lane, and there are literally trees falling into that stream. It's a complete failure of a head wall, and so the concern is that if we get a significant storm,
That could collapse.
yes.
Right,
it does.
Okay, well, I,
What typically happens is they get undercut and they become a place for kids to hide around and whatnot too, because they do become a danger.
Sure.
I'm not familiar with that one, it's a different engineer handles it, but I know the drainage system, a lot of these communities are 50, 60 years old, and there's been some erosion around them, and they do need repairs.
okay. I was asking more for my personal, to avoid those areas during construction, so, but I'll definitely, look out for that list. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Radish?
Good evening, Council. Frank Radish from Fenwick Lane. Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year.
The change in tax law has created some anxiety in high-tax states like New Jersey, and some municipalities are looking at changing and creating new accounting practices that impact their residents. Is this municipality looking at anything in changing their way of doing accounting or taxing that will impact the residents?
I think what he's referring to is the establishment of charitable funds. Mr. Parliament might have some knowledge of it. That is something that a couple municipalities, one or two, has looked into. I don't know that has gone anywhere because I don't think that, number one, the state is in a position to approve that type of fund. And the bigger problem is that that would have to be approved by the IRS. And I don't personally feel, and I've talked to a couple RMAs regarding it, that something like that would be approved by the IRS. Now to address what just took place, my understanding is the IRS is going to allow those that made prepayments of taxes for the first and second quarter, meaning the February and May quarters, because those have already been billed. The ones that made payment for the full year, which would include the August and November of 2018, those you will not be able to use to offset that $10,000 limit. My understanding is the state is encouraging a program of refunds for those individuals that may have paid that August and November and now would like to get that money back. So it's possible, Council, we may be bringing a resolution to you to promote those refunds. But making pre-tax payments has always been there and available to anyone. Anyone can prepay their taxes.
Yeah, I was more asking about the charitable aspect where.
No, I don't know where that's going.
Does this council have any, or administration have any view on that? If some of these municipalities, if this survives legal scrutiny and they move forward with that, do we have any opinion on that?
I read about it a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't think it's gonna hold up.
I don't either. I don't think the IRS will approve it.
I think it's trying to circumvent the law that was passed, and I don't think it's gonna hold up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for coming out Monday, Frank, you and your family. Appreciate it. Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening again, Council. Ray Polidoro from Ariel. Comes a time when I have to pay the township compliments, and tonight is one of those nights. After the events that unfolded in the Ariel section, Brittany Woods, the compliments to our police chief, our police department, all the law enforcement and first responders that had responded. While this was playing out on television and talk radio, as far as New York and in Philadelphia, they were questioning how long this was going on. And of course, there was calls coming in and calls going out, television comments, and the anchor people and what have you were questioning why this had gone on so long. Our police chief and our first responders, when all was said and done, justified why it took so long and why it was going to play out the way that it did in the best possible scenario with the best outcome and no loss of life. And again, our township and our police department does deserve the respect and the compliment for the tools that were supplied and the knowledge that was supplied and the training that was supplied to our police officers and the tools that the town had at their disposal to make sure that it ended the way that it did. Secondly, in the years that I have been coming to council, and for those years that you guys did know me when I was sitting over here just watching, as I began to accumulate information coming from a major city to a small city, I had the privilege of dealing with Road to Josie. When I began to take on new responsibilities, besides just questioning you and keeping my eyes on you and looking to see what the town was made of, Road to Josie was very key in my finding out what things needed to be done for my responsibilities to be met. Whether it was a petition for ballot that had Rose custom-made template with each number explaining what needed to go where.
We have a new one for this year. Just pick it up.
And for the few years that I had to come to Row and go over that template again, until, of course, I got the idea to make a copy of it and follow Row's template, which made the ballot petitions flow, and with her great advice. And then on election days, at the end of the night, before the county took over the automated and online, coming to the municipal building and peeking in the blinds to see if they were done yet, and Rose great patience with me. And whenever I had an Oprah request, I very rarely waited 7 days. Most of the things that I asked for, Road to Josie was very prompt, efficient, very professional with, and extremely friendly. It's an understatement to say that I'm going to miss Mrs. DeJosie. It didn't take me long to put two and two together, obviously, having coached baseball with her father-in-law, Stan, with baseball and beginning discussions with that. I will miss her in the dealings that I have with the township. I'm very grateful for all that you've done for me to help me fulfill my responsibilities, both in forms and all things that I needed to do. And all of your advice and teachings were most beneficial to me. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're welcome.
And the last compliment I have is to handing the torch over to a very, very competent and delightful individual. I know that I will probably receive the same quick and prompt responses, and everything will still be done as professionally and personally with Nancy, as I've had to deal with Nancy in years past, whether Roe was on vacation or whatever was needing to be done, that I required the services of the clerk's office. So my hat's off for the township, for the selection of Road to Josie, and for Nancy. We'll miss her and look forward to dealing with Nancy. So thank you so much for your time. Happy New Year, and let's go Birds.
Mr. Sweet.
A few quick items. There was an article on the patch that said Gloucester Township, with the new tax laws, received over $4 million in prepaid taxes. Is that correct, roughly?
It wouldn't surprise me. I didn't verify that figure. I did see that. I believe it was $3 million.
I'm just going by the article. I'm not questioning the validity of it. I'm just wondering if we
I'd
received.
have to get back to you.
Okay. I'm not questioning the amount. Are we doing anything with that? Putting it in, you can't do anything with that?
You cannot use that. It has to be set aside.
has to be set aside and non-interest bearing, you can't, like, go buy?
You can't use it for
Okay.
surplus, can't do anything.
Can't buy Bitcoins.
Okay, well, Bitcoins has fallen, so I don't know if that's really the way to go. I was hoping maybe we put a really large bet on the Super Bowl, but that's besides the point. Probably about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I approached council with a plan that Haddonfield had to lower taxes, help their residents. Basically, buying, like, they get a business card, and if they shop in town, they get a discount on their real estate taxes, which gets applied. The merchant basically pays it. I see that Gloucester Township is now doing the same thing. You guys had said you would look into something like that. Is that something that I can help with, to look into, to formulate with council, or?
That was something that was explored by the mayor's office maybe 4 or 5 years ago, because I know that Stratford and Voorhees participated. Summerdale, and Ms. Carr had brought that up when she came here. Where it went, how beneficial it is, how well it's performed for those townships or communities, I'm not aware of it. Mr. Cards, do you have anything to add to that?
If I
follow up, and if Mr. Sweet is interested in working on that, we can always use some help.
If I follow up with these townships and figure out how it's run, can I approach council with it at a workshop?
Well, yes, absolutely, but also provide that to Mr. Cards.
Okay, all right. And the last thing is, Ro, I know I haven't been as much of a pain in the butt as Ray has been over the last couple of years, but you will be missed, and I thank you for walking me through, because I know my first Oprah requests probably were pieces of junk, and you still got me the information until I got the form down pat. So I appreciate your, patience with me. So you will be missed, but thank you for all your help in getting me through that process as well. Thank you. Everybody have a good night.
You as well. With that, we'll close our second public portion. Polling the directors.
Mr. Lechner.
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Chief Earl.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Mr. Carlemere.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Campbell.
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Carter.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Hutchison.
Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Mr. Mignon.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Awesome job by the police at that catastrophic event 2 weeks ago. Ro, certainly going to be missed.
Thank you.
Nancy, I know you're going to do a great job. Looking forward to seeing you on Monday nights. And last but not least, I know we talked a lot about sports tonight, whether it was scoreboards or whatnot. But you can see what an organization like what the Eagles did last night, how it can bring a community together. When you look at Frankfurt Cotman last night, Broad Street in South Philly, no matter what it is, sports is a wonderful thing for not only just adults, but for kids also. And we want to make sure that the children in Gloucester Township get that feeling, whether it's aesthetics or whatnot, and they have that opportunity to live their dreams of being one day a professional player. And no matter what, our job is to make sure that they have that feeling, whether it is getting a scoreboard or just playing, pickup at a sandlot. Thank you.
Mr. Owens.
Chief and the GTPD and county, kudos to you guys, saving lives of officers and helping that situation. Ro, you'll be missed. Nancy, look forward to working with you. And Orlando, or Mr. President, you did a great job on Martin Luther King Day with your day of service, with you, all the volunteers, and the partnership you have with the school districts. Seeing over 800 kids and families from throughout the township come together, serving our community on what we call as a day on. It's wonderful. It's why I'm proud to be up here, and why I'm proud to live in this township and volunteer as well. So kudos to you.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Also, kudos to you, as always. Police department is fabulous. You're just such an asset to the township. We all appreciate you. I appreciate your sportness and working with the community and keeping that close knit bond. I appreciate everything you do. Mr. Mercado, again, MLK Day was great. I enjoyed making my part of 1,000 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And it was just a great feeling for all to give back to our community. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Mr. Sweetie, I like your comment about keeping people on their toes. I think that's an important part of the community. And I'm glad that you're here to do your part of that. Asking questions and gathering knowledge is very important. And thank everyone else for being here.
Mrs. Winters?
I actually want to thank Chief and everyone. They did a phenomenal job throughout that whole incident. Look forward to working more with Nancy. I think things will go as smoothly as they always have been. I don't think there'll be too much transition there. Congratulations, Ro. Thank you for your future endeavors. And thank you to everyone. Have a good night.
Mrs. Trotter?
Also, Chief, thank you to you and to the Gloucester Township Police for keeping us safe, especially 2 weeks ago with that incident. I appreciate everything that you guys do, and God bless you all and the families, because that I know from some of the families how frightening that was for them to watch their loved one be a part of that. So thank you for keeping everyone safe. Glad it all worked out. And Orlando, congratulations to you and to your team for another successful Martin Luther King Day. Having been a part of it for 6 years, I'm amazed at how this has grown, and you continue to grow this event every year. So thank you for what you do. It's great to see the community come together and be a part of such a great day. And thank you all for your comments. Ro, I wish you all the best, and thank you for everything you've done for me and educating me over the 6 years. Nancy, welcome aboard. Have a good night.
Mr. Mercado?
So on a Thursday morning at 4:15 in the morning, I received a phone call from the mayor. And I'm at a certain age, when you get a phone call past 10 o'clock, you think something bad has happened. And so I get a 4:15 phone call from the mayor, says there's an issue taking place in Brittany Woods. And the discussion took place about whether to close schools. And he was going to speak to Superintendent Rapisi of the Black Horse Pike Regional and Superintendent Bildo of Gloucester Township Public Schools, and also with the chief to discuss what they needed to do to ensure the safety of our children in our school district, but also the residents of our community. And all of them worked wonderfully together to make a decision that perhaps folks in different parts of our community didn't understand, but something that was pertinent and significant and very much needed. So, Chief, I want to thank you and the men and women of Gloucester Township Police Department for your work that day. You were wonderful on camera. So was Deputy Chief Harkins, and I was very proud seeing you guys. And you can dodge questions. So if you have very well, so you may have a second career, maybe in elected office with us. But no, there's questions that you can provide, and just questions that you cannot answer. But I was very proud of you representing our community. Ro, I said my things earlier today, but I wish you the best. And I'll see you around town. And I'll see you later this week. I look forward to working with Nancy. I've been working with Nancy for 14 years. So Nancy will be up here, and we won't skip a beat. We are accepting nominations for Black History Month. We'll be celebrating that on the second meeting in February. Dorset Kelly is one of our committee members for Black History Month, and we'll be working together with 2 other individuals to put a program together for the second meeting in February. We are accepting nominations up into the second week of February, I believe. And lastly, our MLK Day of Service. Yes, it was our 7th year, and we officially had 817 volunteers, but there was far more than that. Folks just show up and want to be part of it. And it's not a one-man operation. There are many people. My colleagues on council served as project leaders. There are people in the audience that served as project leaders and participated and brought their families. And there were 27 projects throughout the township. And we keep adding more and more. So if there's a project, there's an organization that needs help, needs volunteers, contact me. And we can add that to our list to provide volunteers next year for MLK Day of Service. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Mr. Josie, would you close out the meeting, please? Have a great evening.
You know, I love